If you have checked your phone within the first 2 minutes of you waking up this morning, this video is for you. In fact, over 80% of people do this every morning, but what most people don't realize is that they're frying their brain's reward system. You think that you're just scrolling on your phone, but what you're actually doing is that you're destroying your brain's ability to focus, to work hard, and to feel anything. And the fact that dopamine has a high impact on our attention span, on our motivational drive, and our overall well-being is nothing new. But what is new is that most people don't even realizing that they're dopamine frying their brain every single day. So if you would say about yourself that you're ambitious but somehow still stuck, that you're sometimes able to focus but in the end you always get distracted, or if you have a lot of motivation but you somehow never do anything, then here are 5 signs that your brain is overstimulated and how to fix it. And most importantly, if you recognize your behavior in some of those 5 steps, then fixing your dopamine addiction will most likely also fix a lot of other problems you have in your life. The first and one of the most strongest signs that you might have a dopamine addiction is that you cannot even raw dog reality for longer than 2 minutes. If you have a super short attention span or absolutely no tolerance for boredom, then this is one of the strongest indications for a dopamine addiction. If you cannot last longer than 2 minutes in a low stimulus environment without chasing distraction, that means that your brain is craving unnatural amounts of dopamine. And that could be, for example, if you're waiting in the supermarket line for your turn, or if you're waiting for an elevator or waiting at the bus stop, and you cannot stop yourself from whipping out your phone or listening to a podcast or checking the latest notification. And I had an observation about exactly that just a couple days ago when I was riding on the bus, because there was this young kid sitting opposite from me, maybe 10 or 11 years old, and was mindlessly scrolling on YouTube Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikTok or something like that. And after a couple minutes, he realized that his bus stop was coming up, so he got up and put the phone in his pocket and went to the door. And as the bus was approaching the bus stop, the kid got the phone out of the pocket again and started doom scrolling because it couldn't bear the 20 seconds from the bus coming to a full stop, the door opening, and him getting out. And that told me that this kid's attention span is totally fried. So if you have the feeling that you're quickly getting bored, and once the boredom comes, you always have to distract yourself immediately, that is one of the strongest indications that you might have a dopamine addiction. A second very obvious sign that you might be dopamine addicted is that you pick up your phone right after waking up. In fact, 81% of people cite that they are using their phone within the first 10 minutes of them waking up in order to scroll through social media or the news or check some kind of notifications. And not coincidentally, also 80% of people use their smartphone as an alarm clock. And of course, for us, this is a direct gateway to immediately check our phone and to start chasing our first dopamine spikes without our brain fully awake or fully functional yet. And the biggest problem with you creating dopamine spikes within the first 10 minutes of you waking up is that once it's time to get out of bed, you're already in a dopamine deprived state. And that means motivational wise, your day is already an uphill battle before you even have gotten out of bed. A third and very clear sign that you might have a dopamine addiction is that you need background stimulation for everything that you do. And of course, there are levels to this, but some classic examples could be that you cannot even eat food without watching a YouTube video, or that you cannot commute without listening to a podcast, or that you cannot cook without having a Netflix show running in the background, or some people cannot even take a shower without external stimuli. And if you're on this level that you cannot even take a shower without listening to a podcast, that is a really strong indication that you have a dopamine addiction. Because when in most normal situation like eating, cooking, cleaning, or even showering, silence feels wrong, that usually indicates that your baseline stimulation is too high and should be regulated. The fourth signal is that if you would say about yourself that you're ambitious but at the same time also lazy. If you're feeling like you're being constantly trapped between feeling ambitious, having big goals and aspirations, while always ending up doom scrolling, feeling exhausted and procrastinating, that usually indicates that you're tapped into the dopamine trap. Abusing dopamine usually leads to you losing motivation, internal drive, and also your energy. And in that state, it doesn't really matter how strong your ambition is or how big your goals are, you will not make progress when you're in a dopamine deprived state. You can think of your dopamine addiction like an invisible weight that is just holding you down and holding your ambitious spirit hostage. If you have a constant urge of chasing your goals but somehow always end up on the couch doom scrolling, that is usually a strong indication that your brain is dopamine fried. The fifth indication is that you haven't read a book in a very long time. And with that, I of course don't don't mean that if you haven't been reading a book for a long time that you have a dopamine addiction. I'm just saying if you hadn't had an activity that involves concentration over an extended period of time without involving a screen, that usually means that you have dopamine fried your brain in the meantime. And the reason why reading books with a dopamine addiction seems impossible to you is because books simply don't give you the same dopamine spikes as TikTok gives you. When reading a book compared to TikTok, the dopamine levels rise much slower and much more sustainably, which most dopamine addicts have no patience or attention span for. Okay, now that you might know that you have a dopamine addiction, here's what you can do about it in 3 simple steps. The first step is that you have to identify high stimulation activities. If that's doom scrolling on TikTok right after waking up, if that's listening to podcasts in the shower, if that's checking notifications while watching a movie, or even watching YouTube videos while eating, identify everything you compulsively do but you don't actually enjoy. The second step is then to reduce this constant stimulation. And the key is to gradually reduce the constant flow of dopamine and not going to zero immediately. And in the beginning, this will feel of course very unnatural, but that is completely normal. Now in step 3, after having identified and then reduced the high stimulation activities, we will now have to replace them with low stimulation activities. And that includes that you start picking up a book instead of TikTok, maybe you go out for walks, or you start working on hard things. You just have to find your thing that is able to fill the void that is now left after we have reduced all the high stimulation activities with something that builds dopamine more sustainably. And you have to remember that your receptors are down-regulated, which means that everything will seem very boring at first. And the fourth tip is a little bit of a bonus tip, and that is to give it time. Because maybe on YouTube you have seen some videos about dopamine detox and how to reset your dopamine in 24 or 36 hours. The problem with people claiming that the 36-hour dopamine detox has helped them to reclaim focus is that they're ignoring basic neuroscience. The goal is not to remove any dopamine, how many people are claiming online, but to re-regulate your dopamine receptors by reducing constant stimulation. And that is a process that usually takes weeks or sometimes even months, and not 24, 36 or even 48 hours. That is just not possible. Doing a dopamine detox for 36 hours is basically the equivalent of you telling an alcoholic to stop drinking for 36 hours. It's simply not a long-term solution. So there you go. Those were my 5 signs that you have a dopamine addiction, and also 3 steps or things that you can do about it. Let me know in the comments if you have realized your own behavior in those 5 signs and if you have done something about it. Also, like this video, subscribe to my channel for weekly videos, and see you in the next one.